Hi everybody, my name's Stanley and I'm the founder of Anicca Digital and Anicca AI and Insights. So I'm going to be talking about how we've used Claude Code to build a lot of internal processes, but also two apps which we are at the point of selling. So first of all, I have to pay homage to Grant because a lot of the stuff he was talking about, we've actually developed it into an app. And we've got an AI adoption ladder as well. And one of the interesting things was, I spoke to about 4,000 people last year. And every time I asked the audience, what are you using? About 80% of them were using free ChatGPT. So a lot of people have got their heads in the sand. And there's only a small percentage that actually know what the hell AI agents are. And that's the talk that we're going to talk about today. So because it's such a wide variety of people in the audience, I have absolutely no idea what your level of knowledge is. So I'm going to sort of start with a basic level and then sort of go a bit deeper. So first of all, you're all going to be aware of the difference between chat AI, automation, which would be the sorts of things that you would have behind a voice agent or scanning your emails and some of the other things that have been talked about in the last 2 days. And then the ability to build either autonomous or semi-autonomous agents, which is the topic of today. So I'm not going to spend too much time going into the detail in some of these slides because I want to get through a little bit further. But effectively, an AI agent is something that does a task for you and has got some tools. But the sorts of agents that I want to talk about are the ones that have got access to your desktop and your files and actually enable you to be able to create dashboards and SaaS products, etc. And one of the interesting things that I've realized, as you can see, I've got a lot of gray hair, and there's quite a lot of you in this audience that are well over 40 and have been in the industry for a bloody long time. I mean, I've been in the industry for 23 years, just to have some context. Anicca's 20 next year. And we've got a lot of experience. So if we can get what's out in our head into a dashboard or into an app or an automation, that gives us a lot of a big USP. A bit like, what we were just talking about there. It's your own personal IP that will take you to the next stage. Now, last year, NAN was the big thing. This is actually a workflow for Make. And if you've never built a workflow before, it's a really good way of understanding the basics. And this workflow is driven from a drive sheet, which is called every 15 minutes. I haven't bothered to put the drive sheet in, but I can provide a longer version of the deck. And effectively what you've got is a column with all the ideas, a column where the creative is placed, a column where the image is placed, and then what we call a controller column. Now, depending on what's in that controller column, it will either go through the first route or the second route, and it does that every 15 minutes. So if you say, I want to create content, it will go across the top. And you can see from the image that you've got nodes which are doing specific things. Now, the reason this is so helpful for when you're first learning it and when you're teaching other people is it's really obvious what each of these nodes are doing. So you can see you've got a really detailed prompt that's hidden in the ChatGPT node or the OpenAI node. Then you've got the image creator, and then you send it back over to Drive. Now, once you've got that content in the sheet and you've reviewed it and edited it, because you should really get a message to tell you to do that, then you will change the control and say, go and post my social post. And then the bottom one will go through the router at the bottom. And the first thing that you've got there is webhook. Now, most of you are working in Magento and development and Shopify development, so most of you know about calling webhooks. But a lot of marketing agencies haven't got a blooming clue about anything to do with webhooks, APIs, or anything like that. So for a lot of people that want to start to use automation within their agencies, the first thing that they've got to get over is how to get non-technical people to start to understand authorization and API keys, which is sometimes a big barrier when you actually start to build apps. So what you can see along the bottom is a whole load of nodes which are functionally doing a specific task. So they've got APIs into Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. So what this diagram shows you is the fundamental elements of any automation. First of all, you need some form of trigger, which can be human automated or it can happen by something in the environment. You've then got some controller code or you've got some routing, which then takes you down a different path. You've then got modules or nodes which do a specific task or have a specific skill, and they have to be prompted or managed with your IP to get the best possible output. And then you've also got a link to credentials and software and APIs. Now, the interesting thing about this is that in a lot of cases, if we were now doing this in Claude Code, each of those modules or nodes would be a skill that you would develop as a way of actually carrying out a specific task. And I'm assuming that majority of people in this room are using Claude and may know what a skill is, but it's like a recipe. You can even use it going back into Claude projects, which is, we were using skills about a year ago now. And what it does is it has all the instructions that you need to carry out a specific task. It's got the MD file, which is markdown file of all the prompt, but it's got your templates, it's got any tools associated with it, any Python, any JavaScript. So that is exactly what we're doing when we're doing it in Claude Code, except for when you're doing it in Claude Code, what you're doing is you're doing it on your desktop, and you're using the skills that you've got saved on your desktop, and then individually you can do some great work. What Grant was talking about then yesterday was, of course, that means that a lot of people are working in isolation, and then there's no sharing of skills within the company. And if somebody leaves, their AI knowledge goes out the door. Because there's no infrastructure, there's no easy way of doing that. Okay, so if you build an AI agent, what you've got is 3 elements. So you've got the trigger, and this is really for reference if you've not done any automation yourself. Then you've got the sort of what I would call the engine in the middle, where it does the actual job that you want. And then you've got different outputs. So our first example of doing this was about 3 years ago, where we were using a CSV file, an Excel file with a Python script, and we had a very poor CSV download from Magento. And then by using some prompting, we were able to send it through the API and then bring back a row at a time an enhanced product description, which then we could upload. So that was sort of early automation, well before Claude Code and Codex and everything else is around, and really before people were even using NAN. So you can see that how that can then be extended, particularly if you've got tools like NAN or Claude Code. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you, because I don't think anybody's mentioned, is how you can then use this with a product like Retail. There are others available, to actually create a voice agent. Have any of you heard a voice agent within e-commerce? Has anybody used voice agents with e-commerce? Okay, one person. Anybody else got a voice agent? Shall we try and see if we can hear it? You guys, could you click on the little play button for me? This was a year to build this. It was incredibly complicated. And we can stop it there. Okay, so the reason this was so complicated to build wasn't actually the Retail itself and how we linked. It was all the connections that were needed to be made with the PIM, which we used rather than the Magento database. We had a whole RAG built around all the SOPs. We also were integrated into the delivery API. And also we built, it was integrated into Freshdesk as well and Go High Level. So Go High Level was recording all the calls. Actually, the things that have held it up is more about things like GDPR and stuff like that, believe it or not. So, and the testing that you had to do to get it right was really quite extensive. So that is using NAM behind the scene in automation, but basically every time a call comes in, and we've got one on our site as well, so whenever somebody goes onto our site or phones our number up, we get the form and the automation. It can book appointments and everything as well. So how do we use Claude Code and how do we go forward with this? So how many of you are using Claude Code at the moment? Just give me a bit of an idea. Okay, about 50% of you. Okay, so getting started is the hardest thing, and if you've been using it for a while, it's quite likely that you're going to be using it via probably the terminal. We got into using it heavily in January, so we use it via Cursor, but we found it really difficult to get the non-technical people to use it, and it was only really when it was put into desktop and there was multiple tabs and projects that we managed to convert the team, and that was always the biggest barrier. So if you've not used it in desktop, I definitely recommend you download it. I've actually got a Claude guide that I'll show you in a minute. So they've recently changed it. They've taken co-work out and put it in part of the prompt at the bottom. So you're either in chat or you're in code. This is the list of all the projects. I'm finding this clicker really annoying. So this is all the projects that you've got, which relate to somewhere on your laptop. And if you're using Terminal or you're using Cursor, we have a whole series of tabs. And one of the things that you really learn to do when you're using anything to do Claude Code is, or Codex or anti-gravity, is you have to multitask, because everything takes so bloody long that you have to, have 3 or 4 on the go at once. Otherwise, you'd be sitting there twiddling your thumbs. And then this is the where you enter the prompt at the bottom. So today and yesterday, I start it on a Sunday. What I do every week is I do a scrape of about 25 or 30 websites. And then from there, what I do is I've got a really detailed prompt, which is a second skill, where I then convert that into a blog. I then will quickly check it, make sure it's okay. I'll get it to create me an image using OpenAI. It's basically the edit a template endpoint. And then I get it to load it straight into WordPress. I have to manually add the meta tag because the description tag, because it can't do that through the API. And then effectively, I then get it to write me an email that I can then send it out through LinkedIn. Sorry, a LinkedIn post. I send it out. And then this morning, before we came, I took that. I then created my newsletter for my LinkedIn newsletter template, pasted that in, got the image, put that in, and then sent out another post. So effectively, a job which would have taken me a day to do pre-AI, I can do in probably an hour over 2 days because everything's already sorted. And the actual research is now scheduled. I'm currently using Git Actions to do a lot of scheduling because they can happen irrespective of my laptop being closed rather than just a local scheduled task. I've done quite a lot of, this is what it looks like. I've done quite a lot of work to try and train other people in this because it's only really once you get started you can really sort of push it to the limit, and this is the second part of that process. So what I really wanted to tell you about is how you get to the next stage where you actually use it more like a coding tool. So I was vibe coding an MVP a year ago called Secret Agents. It was part of a course that I was doing. And so I learned to use Cursor pretty quickly. And then once we got Claude Code involved, then we were able to do a heck of a lot more since January. And we've actually got 2 SaaS products, one of which is ready to sale. So the first stage that I'm going to show you is the first stage is to go from a beginner to an AI builder. And that's sort of what I've explained so far. And in the book that I've got, which is like 88 pages, it's about the first half. And then what you really need to think is that most people don't get any further than this. And it's only when you get to the next stage where you start to integrate your APIs and you have EMV files, you start creating dashboards, which you've got to design, and then you actually then convert them to apps by linking it through to things like Supabase, GitHub, and Netlify or Vercel, that you really go through to the next stage. Now, if you're completely new to this, I apologize to the guys that do this all the time, or guys or girls that do this all the time. There's 6 real elements that you need when you actually start to build AI into an app. And that's well, some of this you'd have anyway. So Claude MD file is like your sort of, your online identity, which Claude uses for everything that it does. And then every chat or project that you've got has also got its own memory file or MD file. You can have a whole load of files on your local drive. We can also link it to SharePoint or whatever else you're using. And then you can have your skills. We've developed something like 200 skills. And one of the things that we did was we converted all our old custom GPTs into skills, and also all our old NAN automations. We took the JSON and converted all them into skills, as well as going and stealing other people's and then repurposing them. So my philosophy is how you actually create your skill database is to build it and bottle it. So everything that you do, if you're building, because I've got loads of documents, all my slides, all my presentations, the book that I've built, all of that is built in Claude. So I've got pretty much a skill for nearly everything to run the business, and working with Darren, who's sitting quietly there. And between the two of us, we've literally got a couple of hundred skills that we use. But what we can do is take a skill we've already got and then repurpose it for another client. So you can end up with customized skills. In addition to that, we've got the EMV file where all your secrets are held. And then the other thing that you need to learn pretty quickly when you're doing anything in Claude Code is if you keep on filling up the box of your chat, you get to a point where it try and condense it, and then the performance will go through the floor, and also you'll lose a load of data. So I've got a load of handovers that I do after a certain period of time. And that means that I'm constantly starting new chats, and I might be working on projects for months, and we'll literally start something maybe 2 or 3 times a day, or just once a day, depending on how much I'm working on it. And then the other thing is, if you actually want to create agents and you want to automate a lot of this, you can do scheduled tasks on your local machine, and also Claude and a lot of the other platforms have got some stuff where you can use their server. But actually, Git Actions is the best place to do this, because with Git Actions, it's very reliable, and you can check whether it's worked or not. If you want to then make it into an actual app, then you're really going to start needing to bring in Supabase into the mix, and then you can deploy by Netlify or Vercel, and then you want to do authentication and capture signups. So this is really where you go from just an internal app to something that you might want to sell and other people to use. And for us, particularly with the analytics app, Supabase is really key because we bring in the data every day using Git Actions from about, at the moment, about 20 different APIs and platforms like Shopify, Magento, all the e-commerce ones, some of which are more difficult than others to bring in. And then you've got Google Ads, Analytics, Search Console, then a lot of other marketing platforms. So from there, what we've done is we've built 2 products. The first one is Armadillo, and Armadillo is a really complex analytics package. It's similar in functionality, things like Triple Whale and Polar, but a lot cheaper. But it's also designed for clients that work with lead gen as well. So it's also bringing in CRM system. And our eventual aim is to, we're going to funding to do this, is to also bring in all the marketplaces and all finance as well, so it become a business intelligence platform. But what we're trying to do, and the reason I was keen to speak to here, is we're doing a sort of a revenue share with agencies, because we think that, A, they will find it really useful to use across all their clients, because all the data is standardized, it's saved every day, so it's really fast. It's got a lot of AI in it, and it's also got some customization in it. But it also it's got quite an interesting development partnership going forward, and a very, very generous revenue share. And that is available. You can go on to demo-store.armadillo.com and actually try it today. And if any of you are interested, I can demo it as well. The other product is our C4 Company Command and Control Center, which was exactly what Grant described. I've built this. It's got over 200 skills in it, which are completely customizable. It's got a really detailed onboarding. You do need to do a supported onboarding to bring in all your APIs, but it's got dashboards, it's got Design Studio, and then it's also got the functionality of creating company-wide AI. And that's where I think it's moving. Because even though ChatGPT has brought out work, Claude has got small business, they don't really do the detail that you guys need in order to bring the whole team onto one platform, one AI operating system. And so that's my presentation. If any of you are interested, I've got a guide if you're new to this. This is the Claude Code guide. If you go onto the Anicca website, it pops up anyway. We've also got something, the Thursday AI Club, which if any of you are interested in sponsoring or being involved in, we meet every other week. It's a 3-hour session. There's 2 tracks. There's a beginner track and an advanced track. So we've been doing that. We've got about 25 members paying £40 a month, and we're really looking to expand that and grow that quite considerably. And then finally, if you want to get in touch with me, of course, come and see me or via the app. But that's it. Thank you very much.